Imagine a steel-scaled serpent 10 miles long sliding across the earth. A Roman legion, a city that walks. Your shoulders burn under 30 pounds of gear, sandals bite your heels, and the only sounds are trudging feet, clinking armor, and low, urgent horns. Every mile is discipline or death. Could you survive even one day? Rome marches, mercy stays behind always. Before sunrise, the march is already a city on the road, men, mules, carts, and horns fused into one grinding organism. Polybius called it a wall of flesh, and the truth is brutal and metric. Columns could stretch 10 miles, and every man bore his world, roughly 30 pounds of kit on his shoulders, the Larica shield, piles of stakes, and a pot Caligae mud scraping beneath. Command matters more than courage. Officers pick routes to avoid bogs that swallow, wheels and ridges that invite ambush, because a wrong choice can strand a mile of soldiers and 1,000 animals. Vegetius bragged that trained troops might manage 20 Roman miles in 5 hours, but that was a discipline. Most recruits could not match. Those who failed opened blisters and slowed the entire line. Could you keep pace? The column moves like a procedure. Scouts slip ahead, surveyors mark tonight's castra, and centurions set the relentless cadence, 3 to 4 miles per hour, with rests rigidly timed. Every hundredth of distance is a decision: water or speed, shade or security, march or entrench, because the baggage train behind carries food, tools, and the legion's lifeline, and a single broken axle can stop everything. At dawn, the road will decide whom you meet and where you sleep. The column can stretch 10 miles, so messengers take precious minutes to reach the vanguard. That delay hands lethal power to scouts and flankers who will decide whether you live or die. Distance kills. Move fast. Stay sharp. At the fourth watch, between 3 and 4 in the morning, a brief blare of the cornu snaps you awake, and the camp slides into motion. Speculators and explorators slip out ahead on fast horses to test river crossings and hunt ambushes, while 8-man tents are struck, baggage tucked, and the legatus meets his tribunes under oil lamps to choose the route. The lamps smell of pitch, and oil leather straps rasp as men breathe close. Polybius called the marching legion a wall of flesh. Vegetius warned that a single swollen river can undo an army. A Roman mile is about 480 meters, and a stalled ford can cost a cohort, roughly 480 men, their march time and lives. You hoist 25-30 kilograms shield, sword, 2 pila, 3 days of grain, stakes, and a shovel, and by noon those kilos have opened blisters on bare feet. Orders are terse because a single mistaken bend can bog carts, drown mules, or leave the column exposed to ambush. Scouts must return with clear word, and the engineers with simple options. Command decisions made in the lamplight decide where the castra will rise and which flank will wear the first risk. 2 mounted scouts probe the stream and woods. If they miss a swollen ford, a column burdened by 25-30 kilogram packs will be stalled and vulnerable for hours. A blocked ford can stall 50 men for hours. Engineers will build or men die. At the camp's heart, the legatus, his tribunes, and the praefectus castrorum crowd under a single oil lamp, sifting scouts. Reports to dodge marshes that swallow, wheels and ridges that invite arrows. Agrimensors unroll cords and set the groma. Their shadowed brass catches the lamp glow as they trace an unseen square where tonight's castra will stand. Who marks the line where thousands will sleep? Josephus records campaigns lost to one bad choice, and Polybius called the marching legion a moving wall of men, authority that drives every decision here. Reports come in precise terms: a ford 3 miles ahead, 2 hummocks to avoid timber, a half-day's haul from the chosen ridge. 4 to 5,000 mules trail with the impediment: one bogged pack animal can stall a mile of column. Vegetius later warned a single broken axle could undo an army's day. The legate thinks not only of tents, but of honor. Lose the Aquila and morale phrase faster than leather. A wrong field means a bogged column, a flooded ditch, or a praetorium exposed to a midnight storm. The consequence falls on the men who must dig and stand watch. The commanders argue timing, how long the trench must be cut, how high the rampart must rise if rain comes. and with each measure they count time 3 hours to fortify an hour to position gates minutes that become lives in bad weather. Lamps gutter the Groma's brass rings once against wood orders are sent by courier to the vanguard and the impedimenta. They settle the route, and the risk 25-30 kilograms will be strapped to every soldier. 30 kilos rip calluses into bleeding blisters by midday and slow the column's advance. Mules haul wagons, men carry everything. At the shoulder you feel the world shift, you hoist 25-30 kilograms. Scutum gladius 2 pila helmet larica or segmentata, and a furca sling with cooking gear, and the column expects you to be the pack. Plutarch records Marius forcing each man to carry his own kit. 3 days of grain ride with you and valley bite the straps. Could you carry that? Hobnails grind underfoot as centurions set pace, and the new man in the middle swallows a raw, steady breath. Every extra kilogram opens a blister by noon and slows the whole century. Inside the march, discipline turns kit to weapon. Tools become entrenching spades, pots become ladles for porridge, and your dalabra will build the wall you sleep behind. Orders are ruthless about weight. Unauthorized baggage vanishes, because the legions learned that a long train invites disaster. The Aquila rides near the commander. Its loss costs more than pride. Polybius admired the Romans for this exacting logistics and counted their drills as part of victory. Leather straps smell of sweat and pitch at first, light cornua bark and caligy slap stone. A centuria moves as one driven by vine-staffed centurions who punish delay. Vegetius boasted 20 Roman miles in 5 hours. The claim demands hard roads and harder men. 4,000 pack mules move your grain and gear. If the vanguard fails to clear the first mile, a single broken axle strands the column and invites ambush. The vanguard must clear the road. At the vanguard just before sunrise, the agman slips 2 or 3 abreast where the road allows and pinches to single file on goat tracks. Ahead ride auxiliary light cavalry, Syrian and Cretan archers, and agile infantry from Thrace and Numidia. Specialists meant to probe bridges scatter scouts or die fast enough to send a warning back. Polybius called it a wall of flesh, and the logic is brutal. The farther your advanced detachment, the more warning time for the center, but the greater the cost if the lead is cut off. Who runs into the unknown first? Hobnails whisper on packed earth as these veterans push 1-2 miles ahead in open country, and up to 2 miles in dense forest, buying minutes that can rescue thousands. Their probes aren't idle show, they test fordability, sniff out traps, and draw fire so engineers and commanders can decide the route. The legatus, his tribunes, and the agrimensors watch their signals and measure risks in paces and contours. One wrong crossing ruins an axle or drowns a mule, and turns logistics into loss. Vegetius warned that stragglers invite disaster. Centurions carry the vitus and keep men moving at prescribed pace. The column smells of oil, leather, and river mud carried on the morning air. A single misread ford can strand 20 wagons and force the agrimensors to reroute and fix tonight's castra. Tonight's fate is counted in paces. Within the castrum, the agrimensors unroll cords and level the groma, tracing a sun-true rectangle that must hold a mobile city. They pre-mark ground for 10-20 souls, and their animals insisting on water close by high ground, where possible firm drainage, timber for stakes, and an open field to deploy, if dawn brings battle instead of breakfast. Polybius compared the marching column to a wall of flesh. Josephus records campaigns undone by one bad campsite. Stakes thunk into earth, measuring cords whisper, and decisions made under an oil lamp decide who will sleep warm. Who will carry the blame if the line is wrong? The surveyors pace in fixed steps, count paces, cite a bearing, and hand the coordinates to centurions. Everything is timed because a misread slope sends water where tents lie and men wake in mud. Vegetius warned that an unsecured night invites collapse in discipline and sometimes mutiny. The Aquila and Vexilla are set near the Praetorium incense, and a brief auspice are taken where commanders insist. Hammering stakes rings metallic oil smoke tastes of iron and fear. 10 cohorts, about 50 men, will obey Centurion's orders when the dirtiest work begins. Their cadence is the next danger. Pace, heat, and order decide the march. Centurions set pace or men perish. In the column's core, veterans set the cadence, a steady 3 to 4 miles per hour, the rhythm that turns 10,000 boots into an engine. Centurions march the flanks with vine staffs, hauling stragglers forward, ordering the raw recruits into the middle where panic can be smothered. You shoulder 25-30 kilograms of kit, and Vegetius later bragged a trained man could cover 20 Roman miles in 5 hours. Polybius described the moving mass as almost a single living thing, and discipline is the reason. Talking is rationed, singing forbidden, surprise belongs to Rome. Vegetius warned fatigue breaks ranks faster than steel. The Aquila rides with each cohort, its loss eats glory and shreds morale. Could you hold that pace? Caligae bite into your heels, one sting that will bloom into blisters by noon, while the scutum scrapes your forearm raw if you shift to rest it. Commands come in short iron notes, horns signal water and halt at fixed intervals, and when a centurion lifts his vine staff, a man knows the cost of lagging. The front funds the warning, the cores enforce it, the middle swallows fear. Behind you, the hollow clatter of pack animals announces the impedimenta catching up, and every delayed axle or slow mule multiplies vulnerability. One broken axle can delay 10 men for hours and turn order into exposed panic. Protect the mules or lose everything. Inside the baggage train, the army carries its life and its single greatest vulnerability. 4,000 to 5,000 mules and hundreds of ox carts shoulder sacks of grain and salt barrels of vinegar, spare weapons, tents, mills, medical chests, anvils, and timber for bridges, blacksmiths, medics, cooks, and mule drivers march as a mobile workshop. Vegetius warned that the Annona decides campaigns. A mounted screen of 200-400 light cavalry usually skirts the train, tasting the scrub and listening for trouble. Polybius called the march a wall of flesh, and Josephus notes how ruthlessly commanders enforced order. Unauthorized loads vanish, carts do not linger, and theft draws immediate punishment. You feel it in the creak of axles and the sour tang of vinegar. The mule is a living crate, and its feet set the column's rhythm. What happens when it stops? A single snapped axle can jam a mile of men. No myth, a logistical fact that turns training into panic and turns scouts into saviors. Consequence follows in hours, rations, delayed tents, unpaid for field repairs, pressed into fevered service by smiths whose anvils tramp through the dust. The train carries reserve pila and stakes for entrenchment, so every lost cart is a hole in the legion's fighting ability. Centurions watch morale fray when supplies slip. Hence the doctrine the impedimenta rides under protection with detachments of light infantry and cavalry flanking its sides, and a beefed rear guard watching the tail. A single snapped axle can jam a mile of men. One broken wheel delays 10 men for hours. That delay hands the initiative to flank scouts and rear attackers, forcing centurions and a rear guard of roughly 300-500 men into overlapping screens. Protect axles or the army dies. At the flanks, light cavalry fan out through scrub and hill, skirting in parallel to sniff ravines and forest tracks before the column arrives. Polybius counted marching lines that could stretch for miles, and now detachments of 300-500 horse probe every side trail, while foot patrols slip into villages to count doors and watch rooftops. The rasp of hooves and the creak of leather are your constant cue. Who watches the watchers? Vegetius warned that a loose tail becomes contagion, so the rear guard, rotated stoic and often composed of veteran cohorts, collects stragglers, drags back deserters, and kills panic before it spreads. A century accounts roughly 80 men under a centurion's vine staff. His discipline folds fear into obedience. Explorators range up to 2 Roman miles ahead to buy reaction time for the column. Tacitus records how weather and swollen streams turned good plans into routes. A man carrying 25-30 kilos opens blisters by noon. If he lags, that immediate cost explains why flankers travel light, and why orders about the impedimenta are enforced like law. Scouts signal by horn runners stitch messages through the scrub, and centurions on the tail break up rumors with vine staffs and summary punishment, because a shouted lie can rout 1,000. After Teutoburg, the doctrine hardened the rear must be as proactive as the vanguard, able to counter a flanking band, seal gaps in the wagons, or form a shield wall at a ford. Explorators range 2 miles. A swollen ford can erase that margin. Rivers swallow wagons and men alive. At the ford, the column grinds to a decision: cross, build, or die. Polybius called it a wall of flesh, and here that wall must stop to buy time. Rain that swells a shallow crossing by noon can turn a ford into a funnel of drowning packs and panicked mules. Centurions order engineers forward, carpenters lash timbers into a makeshift bridge, while shields form an overlapping rampart, and archers from the vanguard sweep the tree line for skirmishers. Vegetius warned the march's endurance as much as maneuver. Most men already carry 25-30 kilograms, and those kilos open blisters and cramp hamstrings by midday. You taste sour pasca and metal, your breath steaming under iron. One muffled horn call snaps the legion from march to fight. Hidden pits and caltrops force instant drills, horns for close order, shields edge-to-edge pila, readied for a short, brutal volley. The impedimenta grinds to a halt when the bridge goes up, and a single broken axle can strand 40 mules and carts behind hostile banks. The legate watches from the bank, while tribunes count cohorts. The centurion's Vitus moves men where fear errs. Tubi and Cornu cut the air, Caligae slap wet stone. Josephus notes how quickly morale frays when food and shelter are delayed, and a lost day costs men more than pride. The Annona for 5-0 requires constant calculation. Engineers can buy an hour, but that hour costs 2 hours of camp labor and exposes the impedimenta. 4,000 animals and their loads will spend the night facing the bank. The Praefectus Castrorum will count axles and men, prepare stakes, shovels, and watchful hands. Within the castra, the legion turns open ground into a fort by rote. Men dig a ditch 2 meters deep and 3 wide, throwing the spoil inward to form a rampart, then drive the wooden stakes into that bank. The 4 gates, Porta Praetoria, the Decumana left and right, are marked and manned before the palisade is finished. Guards take their posts with shields slung and voices low. Inside streets are laid tents, rise on a strict grid. Animals are corralled into a fenced quarter, and the commander's praetorium appears with its altar where omens are read. Josephus notes that such choices of sight and speed decide campaigns. Could you build Rome in 4 hours? The work is surgical and brutal. Stakes thud home, a single hammer sound that keeps men moving, and every spared minute saves watches later. Stakes weigh roughly 3 kilograms. Each 10 stakes add about 30 kilograms to what a contubernium must move, and those kilos open blisters by dusk. The packed earth forms a bank about 1.5 meters above ground, a height that forces attackers to expose themselves and gives Pila and Scuda clear fields of fire. Polybius admired that speed. Vegetius later taught it as discipline. Leather bites where straps cut in pitch smoke, and the scent of incense curl from the praetorium. Centurions count the centuries, about 80 men, and set reliefs with a vine staff and a shout. In under 4 hours the castrum exists. In that time you have shifted the risk from sleeping in the open to holding the lines at dawn. Reliefs change every 3 hours and guard the palisade against night raids. 1 cornu can flip you awake. Within the castra, rations grind into pools over low flames, and the tessera moves from hand to hand as men trade the night's secret. Vegetius warned that trumpet calls and horn blasts run a legion's day here, that rule tightens into ritual. Watches rotate every 3 hours. Medics stitch under lamp oil, and harness is mended, because tomorrow will not wait. Shields lie within reach, and the sour tang of vinegar cuts the dust. 1 cornu blast can flip the camp from supper to line of battle in breaths. The consequence is immediate 3-hour rotations mean chronic sleep debt, and a sentry who nods risks death at his comrade's hands to keep discipline absolute. Orders pass quietly from centurions to contubernia, the tessera repeated at each gate, and even small mistakes. An unhitched mule, a missed latch, can stall a mile of men and invite enemy notice. Night patrols slip past corralled animals, flank scouts test nearby hedgerows, and the rear guard counts heads while the impedimento is checked for loose axles. The camp is a working city that will not unmake itself. Every tool is fixed, every wound bound, every watchword memorized. Tomorrow's march will demand the same weight carried again, and only one blast or one sleeping man can undo hours of labor. Watches rotate every 3 hours, a sleeping sentry costs lives, and the column must react instantly. Can you carry this weight again? Polybius argued discipline decides an army's fate. A centurion commands roughly 80 men. His failure at a gate costs lives and stalls whole miles of marching. A man bearing 25-30 kilograms finds sleep fragments, bruise knees by dawn, and blisters deepen where Caligae rub. The Aquila steadies men when night smells of smoke and oil. If a gate is breached, the fourth watch must close ranks and form the triplex Achai's within 3 minutes. Can you shoulder the watch again?